This program is brought to you by LGT Crestone, local private wealth expertise backed by the stability of a global presence.
Hello and welcome to The Global View, the show where we take a look at ways for investors to capitalize on opportunities outside the ASX. I'm Nadine Blaney. All right, let's get across what happened on Wall Street overnight. The S&P 500 ended 17 points higher, the Dow 175 and the NASDAQ 19, or 1%. That's the 8th and the 6th record high of the year for the S&P and the NASDAQ. Delta Airlines lifted 12% after saying bookings have stabilized and providing an outlook. That comes after pulling guidance back in April. The news pushed other airline stocks higher as well. Levi's lifted its annual revenue and profit forecasts despite tariffs. Levi's expects strong demand for denim in other regions than the U.S., including Europe. It says its forecast accounts for tariffs but assumes no major change in economic forecasts. Consumer discretionary was the best performing sector on the S&P last night. In M&A, food giant Kellogg's shares rose on a $3 billion buyout deal from Italy's Ferrero. That's a 31% premium, with the deal expected to close in the second half of the calendar year. Tesla shares gained after it set November 6th as its AGM date after investor pressure to do so. And copper miners remain a watching brief, with the price of the red metal bouncing after U.S. President Trump's new tariff deadline. In Fed speak overnight, Federal Reserve Governor Christopher Waller reiterated his belief that the central bank could start cutting as soon as next month, while San Francisco Fed's Mary Daly said the time for cutting is nearing. That stands in contrast to comments from Alberto Muslim, who said that it could take until late this year or early 2026 to be clear about the impact of Trump's tariffs. In economic news, in the U.S., weekly jobless claims unexpectedly fell to 7-week lows, with indications employers may be holding on to staff despite a slowing jobs market. The U.S. 10-year yields edged higher after that jobless data, up 0.4% to 4.3%. And the U.S. dollar rose against major currencies, including the euro, but the Aussie outperformed, so extending those RBA-driven gains. Bitcoin was on fire, with Bitcoin hitting a fresh all-time record high, rising above 115,000. Bitcoin is up now more than 22% this year. Well, Trump's tariffs continue to dictate commodity markets, of course. Oil fell more than 2% overnight on concerns about global growth, Brent settling at $68.64 a barrel. OPEC Plus as well is set for a further unwinding of output cuts in September as it trims demand forecasts for the next 4 years. Gold prices, little changed on that stronger U.S. dollar. Futures settled about 0.1% higher along with spot. Copper futures rose 2.5%, still digesting Trump's 50% tariff announcement, and iron ore rose 3%. So for more on what's moving U.S. markets and some stock specifics as well, I caught up with Brad Gastwirth from Unearthing Opportunities, and we began by discussing defense thematics after a bit of a rundown of what happened overnight.
If you look at what this market has really ignored over the last several months, it's quite incredible. But you have really good growth drivers and a lot of tailwind here behind the market for the next several years. I wouldn't be surprised to continue to see new highs. Nothing goes straight linearly, but there's a lot of momentum here for sure.
Yeah, and the thematics are very strong. I know one thing we're focused on here in Australia is defense. I would imagine that's a major thematic for U.S. equities as well. Where are you potentially seeing opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, I've said this for quite some time. I continue to like precious metals. I think it's a great hedge for several reasons. One, just from a tangible good standpoint, it's a great way to have a portion of your portfolio in this precious metals. One from looking at global governments across the globe increasing gold, but also if you look at the material side, it certainly helps and is a benefiting from overall strength in industrials like silver and copper. But if you look at the stock side, I mean, the AI related stocks are continuing to perform quite well. You have to have exposure. I don't think that's new for anybody these days. But the large players are going to continue to win, and I wouldn't be surprised again to see new highs.
And I think it's just a sign of the time as well. You've highlighted a headline that the Pentagon, the US Pentagon, Department of Defense, I suppose, is become the largest shareholder in MP Materials. That's an interesting dynamic.
Absolutely. I mean, they're putting in, I think, around $400 million to MP, and I mean, it makes sense. So if you look at the raw materials that go into semiconductors, rare earth minerals is something that this country is very limited on. MP is a larger producer. This is the reason why the Pentagon or DoD is investing. But you have companies in your neck of the woods in Australia and also in mainland China that have a lot of rare earth that we just do not have. And it's a big disadvantage when you look at the next generation of technology because you need rare earth minerals to build semiconductors. So not a major, I mean, it's a shock that they're putting that much in a public company, but I think it makes sense given, what's happening thematically.
Well, we have rare earths. We'd be happy to share if we presumably wouldn't be slugged with a whole bunch of tariffs, but we'll leave that one there because there's a couple of stories out there that are an interesting dynamic when you think of the primacy of Google right now. So a couple of things. You've got Perplexity launching an AI-powered web browser. So that would challenge Google, I would imagine, on the browser front. And also OpenAI. So is Google sort of going to have to take up the fight with these AI players?
Yeah, and Nadine, it's really a great question. And I do think it's something that we will have to monitor. I mean, Perplexity right now, it's only open to their $200 per month user. It's even the initial feedback is not that great. It doesn't seem like it will be a Google Chrome killer or a browser killer. On the OpenAI side, it'll be interesting to see what they come to market with their search tool and their browser tool. I think it could be quite compelling. I think they have some very smart individuals there. Creating a browser is not an easy thing. I mean, there's been company after company for the last several decades trying to come up with the best mousetrap, and Google and Chrome have really been the number one for years. So it'll take a lot to displace it. If they are able to, it is definitely a hit to Google or Alphabet without a doubt.
All right. Now, where else are we seeing some information coming through? Amazon. Prime Day, how did it go?
Yeah, I mean, we still have 2 more days here in the States for Prime Day, and they're absolutely killing it. I think in the first 24 hours, the announcements were around 10 billion. So you had over a 10% year over year just in the first 24 hours. I think when it's all said and done, and when the Prime Day is over, we'll have a significant record sales for Prime Day. And I don't think it's out of anybody's. I think everybody's expecting some big numbers. I think they're going to blow them out of the water. I'm expecting very big numbers when Prime Day is over.
Really interesting. Interesting as well was that update coming from Levi's in denim. Really looking forward to some strong sales there. So clearly, there's still demand out there. And finally, I mean, my 13-year-old almost started crying when I was teasing her about buying her a flip phone, but it appears not everybody feels the same, Brad.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, Samsung is definitely taking the lead in foldable screens, phones, and I'm expecting next year for Apple to finally come out with their foldable screen phone. So it's still another year and a half away before we get one from on the iPhone side. But Samsung's had a lead. They're competing with the Chinese vendors. Huawei's had a very good trifold phone, and they've gotten significantly better. They're still not mass market, and they still cost a tremendous amount. But there's certainly a market for it when you have the form factor that's just a regular phone, then all of a sudden it opens up to a tablet size. But we're still, we're still ways away from being mass market on just the foldable. And I think by the time, maybe when it comes, we might have those AR glasses starting to displace phones.
All right, so that is a little look at what happened overnight. And of course, that sets us up for the day's trade here, the final session of this trading week, looking for a solid start, up 27 points or 0.3%. We'll be watching the miners. We've also had a few broker moves out this morning, could dictate. But the big news so far today, at least, is John Ling's group private equity offer for the company, which looks to be recommended by the board. That does it for this edition of The Global View. Stick around. We've got the Open coming up for you next.
This program was brought to you by LGT Crestone, local private wealth expertise backed by the stability of a global presence.